Why, more than 60 years after independence, do 14 African nations still use a currency that was born in colonialism, printed in France, and pegged to Europe? It's called the CFA franc, and around 200 million people use it every day across a swathe of West and Central Africa. When it was created, those three letters, CFA, stood for Colonies Françaises d'Afrique, the colonies of French Africa. The name has been softened since, but the currency it describes is still, in large part, the one France built. So how is that still true today? And is it the chain its critics say it is, or the anchor its defenders insist on? Let's start with what the CFA franc actually is, because almost everyone gets this wrong. It is not one currency, it's two. There's the West African franc, issued by a central bank called the BCAO and used by 8 countries, from Senegal to Côte d'Ivoire. And there's the Central African franc, issued by a different bank, the BEAC, used by 6 more, from Cameroon to Chad. They share a name and an identical value, but a banknote from one zone is not legal tender in the other. 2 currencies, 14 countries, 1 colonial surname. That surname was given in 1945. On the 26th of December that year, as France signed up to the new post-war financial order, it created the CFA franc for its African colonies. Most of those colonies would win their independence around 1960, but the currency stayed. The initials were quietly rewritten to mean the African Financial Community. The letters didn't change, neither for a long time did the machinery underneath. And that machinery is the heart of the argument. The CFA franc has always been pegged to a European currency. First, the French franc, and since 1999, the euro, at a single fixed rate, €1 to 655.957 CFA francs. Exactly. France guarantees that you can always convert it. The notes themselves are still printed in a factory in central France. But that guarantee came at a price. For decades, the African states were required to keep a large share of their foreign currency reserves, around half of them, deposited in an account at the French treasury in Paris. And French officials sat on the boards that governed the money. To critics, this was the beating heart of what they call Françafrique, the quiet system by which France kept economic control long after the flags changed. Reserves that could have built roads and hospitals in Africa, they argued, were sitting in Europe instead. A sovereign nation, they said, that does not control its own money is not fully sovereign at all. And yet, and this is where an honest essay has to slow down, the CFA franc has real defenders, and they are not all in Paris. Their case is stability. Because the currency is pegged and guaranteed, inflation across the CFA zone has been remarkably low. Over 50 years, Côte d'Ivoire averaged inflation of around 6%, while neighboring Ghana, running its own free currency, averaged nearly 30%. A stable, convertible currency, they argue, attracts investment and protects ordinary savers from the kind of collapse that has wrecked other African economies. Better a shared, steady franc, they say, than a sovereign one that loses half its value overnight. Both of these things are true at once. The stability is real, and so is the dependency. Trade between the CFA countries themselves has stayed strikingly low, and the fixed peg, when it finally had to move in 1994, was devalued by half in a single stroke, wiping out savings across the region. Stability, its critics say, that bought you a cage. Which brings us to the reform. In December 2019, France and the 8 West African states announced a change. The West African franc would be renamed the ECO. The requirement to park half the reserves in Paris would end. French representatives would leave the currency's board. It was presented as the end of a colonial era. But look closely at what stayed: the fixed peg to the euro and the French guarantee behind it. Critics called it changing the symbols while keeping the substance. And there's a stranger twist still. Years later, the ECO has not actually launched. The notes still say CFA franc, and the Central African zone was left completely untouched, its reserves still flowing to Paris to this day. So the paradox has not gone away. It has simply moved. Because the newest pressure isn't coming from an economics seminar. It's coming from the Sahel, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, now ruled by military governments that have broken sharply with France, walked out of the West African bloc ECOWAS at the start of 2025, and openly talk of launching their own currency to, in one leader's words, break the chains. But even they have not actually left the CFA franc yet. It is, for now, still very much alive. And so we return to the question we started with. 14 nations, 6 decades on, still sharing a currency stamped with a colonial name, printed on another continent, and anchored to Europe, reformed in its symbols, fiercely contested in its politics, but not yet replaced. The real question the CFA franc asks is a simple one. What is independence actually worth if you do not control your own money? This was the story of the CFA franc, told the Sankofa way. Go back and get it. If it moved you, tell us in the comments whose story we should tell next. Until then, stay upright.